Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be going over the live letter number 68. Now, as I am recording this video, it's only minutes after the live letter has concluded, and as such, the information I'm going to be grabbing may be a little bit incomplete. We're going to be using the translations and live letters tab over on the Final Fantasy XIV Reddit Discord, where Aluna Minori has been doing all of the posts for that. While it was officially translated in English, they still compile it here. So I'll include a link to this in the description. You can find all the original sources and transcribing of the event there. And of course, you can always view it on YouTube or Twitch. Again, it is translated into English live, so there is really no miscommunication about what has been said and what has been meant, most likely. Now, before we get started with too many details, during the, they do sort of like a test stream for the live letter, like half an hour to 45 minutes before it actually starts. And Yoshida, while he didn't want to comment too much on Square Enix's future with something such as NFTs, he does explicitly state that NFTs are not coming to Final Fantasy XIV, as it says here, so you can rejoice. But of course, he's not going to speak for all of the board of directors or the CEO, who have already made mention of it in the past. So it'll continue to be something that we are going to pay very careful attention to. And they say they have seen people who are not very happy with it. So I'm just going to assume it's not really going to come into play all too much, at least not in the form that it's been circulating the world for the time being. Now, moving into the live letter itself, this live letter was focused on two things. It was focused on the 10-year roadmap for Final Fantasy XIV, where they're going to be going for the next 10 years, what the game plan is, as well as answering some very important questions from the Endwalker MSQ. We're not going to dive into all the Endwalker MSQ stuff all too deeply, because quite frankly, hearing it from me is not going to be as cool as either hearing it from him or reading it and interpreting it for yourself. So we'll only kind of glance over some of the bits there from the second half, where they did also answer some questions in regards to features that people are in demand for, things such as glamour plates, balance changes, stuff along those lines. So here at the start, they just kind of outlined what it's going to be about. As you can see, they actually started with talking about the last decade of events, thinking back on those things, covering the actual timeline of Final Fantasy XIV, as you can see. Also, let me crop this more correctly. We're going to keep that going, but we're going to take the crops off the side right there. And honestly, if you've been around, none of this is a surprise for you. There's some milestones that are mentioned here. Of course, the abysmal launch and the reviving of 1.0 is all mentioned in this 11-year timeline. But other than Yoshi P remembering back on a few things, talking about how, people wanted super hard content, so they made Gordius, and people asked for 1.0 Classic, and he said Nightmare, and all sorts of things along those lines. There's plenty of stuff. And as you can see here at the top, they're still transcribing as we are going. So let's crop that. Let's do a little bit more live cropping so we can actually make this, a little bit wider for that right there. All right, and then, he even talks about Raubon Extreme, which it was not Raubon Extreme, it was Raubon Savage. Yoshi P, if you're going to remember it, I'm going to ask that you remember it correctly, because it was Pippin Extreme and Raubon Savage. Just saying, it's very important that we remember everything as it was. So, also talks about some of the naming conventions, some of the stuff with PR and whatnot, registration numbers increasing, stuff we've all heard before, but just kind of going over that. And now he talks about looking forward to 7.0. And this was kind of a mixed bag of things to talk about, but there were some exciting developments regarding some of the content we can expect. And I can already hear Ivy is going to become a problem during this recording, as she is sitting at the door and is about to start scratching the carpet. So, Yoshi P wants to tackle a couple of things in the next 10 years. For example, the stigma that just because you don't want to play MMOs, that you cannot participate in Final Fantasy XIV. Something they've always strived against. They want people who play the single-player Final Fantasy games to look at 14 and go, it's a main entry, I'd like to try it. And as such, this is going in exactly the direction you probably think it is going to go in regards to the content structure, with a few twists thrown in. So, the big change that they're going to be making are large-scale updates to the trust system, which are detailed right here. Trust compatibility for every main scenario dungeon and 4-player trials, meaning Ifrit, Garuda, and Titan, all the way back in A Realm Reborn, will be added sort of over time between patches 6.1 and 6.5. So, in 6.1, for example, all of A Realm Reborn is going to be trust compatible. They're also going to be making some other changes. For example, Cape Westwind will now be a solo instance instead of an 8-player trial. So it's got a little bit more gravitas behind the encounter. It won't be something you steamroll over in 40 seconds. On top of that, Praetorium and Castrum, they mentioned, are going to become 4-player instances. Now, they made that kind of confusing because they started to use terminology that more suggests that they are not dungeons, they are not trials, they are instances of some capacity. And then on top of that, it also got a little confusing when they talked about Ultima as well as, well, the last part wasn't really that confusing. They talked about how the actual final encounter of the Praetorium against La Habrea is going to also become its own solo instance. Kind of like some of the other more recent events that we've had that, again, of course, give it a bit more of a this isn't a joke kind of feel. So they're trying to make those things more accessible, but also make them so they're kind of not just a meme for the community, like, oh, time to smash this again for MSQ Roulette. They did not mention the MSQ Roulette and what is happening to it. They did say that, of course, while they're adding trust compatibility for all of these dungeons and reworking some of them, that all the multiplayer things, the regular queuing system still works. If you want to play with other people, of course, they're not going to inhibit that. But they want people to feel as though they can go through all of Final Fantasy XIV's story with as little communication needed as possible. Now, the 8-player trials, they did say they were going to look into those in the future, but it is quite resource intensive. So, for example, they would need to make your AI able to do Bismarck correctly, for example, which requires very specific programming. So they may see that in the future, but for now, they're going to be tackling the main scenario dungeons and 4-player trials that are currently in the game while reworking some of the A Realm Reborn stuff. There will be more updates. Of course, 8-player trials will not be updated at this time, and I know I'm covering it a little bit, but right under that it just says considered for 7.0 or later. So it just covers all that information right here. They're also going to be making some other changes. The floor debuff in Total Rock that slows you down, they're just going to get rid of that because realistically there's not much of a point. The NPCs that are actually going to be joining you are going to be relevant to what is possible in the story at the times like that, especially given that you kind of need people with the Blessing of Light to handle certain ones of these instances, so they can't send you in with just anybody. Yeah, this will be removed. It's supposed to be rebuilt as a quest instance battle. Praetorian Castrum will be a light party dungeon instead. Ultima Weapon will be part of that dungeon, and La Habrea will be a scenario instance battle. So there you go. A little bit more clearly stated in that one. Now, why is that? Okay, so that's all they wanted to talk about, at least in regards to that. But they're going to be doing more trust updates as they go on in 6.2 through 6.5 and 7.0 and beyond. The next thing is some very exciting news in that of Final Fantasy XIV's first graphical update. Yes, Final Fantasy XIV is going to be getting the much desired facelift without an engine rework, mind you. So that does mean the spaghetti we've always had will remain, but the graphical update is going to be coming, and there are some examples of that later in this video and in the live letter that we watched. So it says it's the first one that they're going to be doing. It's because they may do more. I mean, they literally can't do everything all in one fell swoop. So the first push will be covering certain elements, and then they'll have to do a second, a third. They'll have to continue to do it, especially if they want to actually keep the game running for another 10 years. You know, it can't just stop at kind of one thing. It's not going to look like, you know, Horizon Forbidden West in their own words. It is just going to be improved over what it is now. And again, we'll have some examples of that in the near future. Development and preparation are ongoing until the expansion releases, aiming for screen-wide aesthetic appeal suited to a multiplayer environment, meaning it's not going to look like Horizon Forbidden West. And the animation and lightings are also planned to be updated. Now, again, it reiterates things. Minimum operating specifications will change in 7.0 because of this. They're going to try to accommodate a broad range of hardware specs for this as possible. And the PS4 version is staying, in case you were thinking about that, at least through 7.0. Now, this looks a little creepy because this is an example of what they didn't want to do. This was too hyper realistic, and then when they designed this, they saw, okay, that's an example of going too far. You know, it just doesn't hold the aesthetic, it doesn't hold the appeal. This is actually what they have currently in the works. They've only spent about a month on this high res with shaders sort of change that we're seeing on the right. And so this is closer to what you should be expecting in terms of a graphical update for the character models, for the gear, for the cloth, for the environments, you know, all those different types of things. So it looks a lot like people who actually run shaders now. And you have another example here with the Warrior of Light, of course, current on the left and updated on the right. The eyes being, of course, a big difference. The stubble, seeing a lot of difference right there. You have, of course, a Mikote, which, again, the eyes for me, really the big part, but you can even see the eyebrows, the shadows on the face, all those sorts of things, the hair itself being a little better. You have a Urugaden right here. Once again, the eyes really stand out. The stubble on the chin also stands out. And then we have a Lalafell. All I know is I can't wait to see Nanamo cry in high res. It's going to be great. Moving on, some other things they're going to be doing: hair, skin, gear, skin, metal, fabric, better lighting, shadow effects. But not everything is going to be done in one fell swoop. There's going to be some NPCs that are updated and some that aren't actually in the game at the same time. So they're going to be improving those aspects as time goes on. So especially in older stuff, don't be too surprised if you see some characters that are just very oddly looking the same, and it stands out quite considerably. This will also not fix any clipping issues that currently exist with gear. That would actually require adjustments to the physics engines, not to the gear itself and not to the graphics itself. Did I just feel a pull? No, Ivy, you're way back there. So here are a few examples. This is them adding some lighting. You can get a better idea of the shadows on the ground, some of the textures you can see. And this is just from some additional lighting points. They haven't done anything else to this. They haven't facelifted it all too much. The tree you can see a little bit more in the background. You can see the lights popping again with more lighting instances, not just in the back and the middle, but also from like the glowing orbs on either side. And that, of course, reflects some of the changes in the back. Going to this one, in my opinion, a much better example, improved shadow resolution on Titania in her instance. You can see that the light coming in from the windows is a lot more pronounced. It feels more properly like the sun is coming in from the outside, and it's not like built sort of as this, kind of this, the light not really matching the kind of sunlight that's coming in. And that, of course, enhances the shadows. You can see it more clearly, and then you can see all the ambient lighting around her as well. Again, this is just 1 month. This is a great example. This is of metal textures. So you can see left is current, right is what they are currently working on. It glows a lot more. Some of the colors are a lot more vibrant. There's reflections in the metal, which is probably the big thing, especially if you look at the pillars on the right-hand side. You can see the reflections on those pillars probably more clearly than most of the other reflections, especially of the light that you're seeing. But again, just much more vibrant colors, just makes it seem a lot more updated and a lot less dull. Another great example, this is more environmental objects. They are going to be optimizing the way that environmental objects are loaded on the map so that they can make certain areas feel busier or more lively. You can also see the ground textures, the grass, the dirt, the rocks, the actual textures of the boards on the steps themselves. So they're a little bit more, again, believable that they are built. That's one of my favorite images that we actually have here. Grass. Speaking of grass on the left, very pixelated, very ugly. Grass on the right, much more aesthetically appealing. And one of the biggest criticisms of the game is the pixelated grass. Yoshi P even makes fun of it in the live letter. So now you're going to have some better looking grass. It's going to help with the immersion. Again, here's additional lighting points, higher resolution shadows, improved textures, more and better auto-generated greenery, more variety, better resolution. They may even make some additions to fog or other ambient effects. They're currently testing them, but that's all in a month. Pretty impressive, but it'll be a long time before we see that actually all come to fruition for 7.0 itself. They're also going to tune them to the maximum extent that performance allows, so they may be even more improved in the future, especially if you're someone who is on a higher end machine and are playing on one of the higher graphical settings. Now, on top of that, they wanted to reiterate they're going to keep updating the game. Duh, right? It needs content. It can't just have better looking grass. And so they covered a decent bit of what our 6.1 to 6.5 schedule is actually going to be looking at. First and foremost, main scenario update 6.1 to 6.5. Of course, there's going to be a new main scenario unfolding. That is a surprise to absolutely no one. Hildebrand has his formal announcement. He is returning for 6.1 through 6.5. So it's not going to be like Stormblood where he was kind of only there for half of it. They are going full blown. He got his break in Shadowbringers, and we're going to find out what happened to him after the event of Stormblood. We're also going to be getting another side story quest called Tataru's Grand Endeavor. Sounds like a straight to DVD movie to me, but I'm sure it's going to be a good time. That will also be beginning in patch 6.1 and continuing through patch 6.5. Now, moving on to more substantial content, 6.1 Roadmap. Myths of the Realm was our new 24-man raid. We've known that for some time. Crystalline Conflict, the new PvP map that's going to be taking over as the competitive mode, as well as all the other PvP changes, will also be taking place in 6.1. We have confirmation that the Arcus Adara are going to be our first tribe quests and dailies. While they didn't talk too much about the actual content of that, we can assume throughout the expansion we will have one battle, one gathering, and one crafting beast tribe. This being the first one, battle beast tribes, most likely. Dragon Song's Reprise will be our new ultimate. That is still scheduled for 6.1, although most likely 6.11. They like to give us 2 weeks before the ultimate tier releases. And the return of Unreal. It is going to be Ultima Weapon being our next Unreal. Ivy, why are you throwing a fit here? If I let you out in the middle of the record here, you either have to come up and join me for the recording and stay, or you have to, shh. Hey. You have to either stay or you have to go. Okay, Ivy? That's the deal. Do you understand? We're in the middle of work here. You can't just meow at me the whole time, okay? That's not how it works. Okay. So Ultimate Weapon will be the return of the Fox Hollows, return of Unreal, all that good stuff. More stuff as well. Trust system for Realm Reborn. We mentioned that earlier. The new calling card style UI. Now, they mentioned using this for PvP, but they actually said that the calling card is going to be something that you can use for all content. It's basically going to be a part of your profile. You're going to be able to do content to unlock different backgrounds, different customizations for it. So it's another form of collectible that you will be able to, customize for your profile for your account. New hairstyles for the Hrothgar, the Ishgard housing, and Emeliance will be our custom delivery. There will, of course, be new trials. The main scenario, EX trial, is mentioned in the bottom right, as well as other assorted updates. Moving on to 6.2, trust system for 2.x main scenario dungeons. That's 2.1 through 2.5, and even through some of the Heavensward main scenario dungeons, just the first 2 or 3, but they are going to start working on that. New weapon enhancements, most likely referring to a relic weapon equivalent, a Zodiac Braves anima weapon, something of that capacity. And then in brand new content, Criterion dungeons. These have a variable difficulty, whether you're doing them with 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, or 4 people. So it's content you can choose to take on alone, or content you can choose to take on with allies, and you will still get to experience either way. That is going to be expanded upon in future patches. Just to be clear, that is not a deep dungeon. It is a completely different system, a completely different content altogether for people who want to group up with small groups of players, even if it's not a full group of 4. Island Sanctuary, officially confirmed for patch 6.2. That is the first confirmation we have gotten of that. And of course, Pandemonium Savage, another Unreal trial, the trial series, which they did not announce here, and of course, other things as well. Moving on to 6.3, the trust system for the remaining Heavensward main scenario dungeons. Our new deep dungeon, in case you were curious if Criterion was the deep dungeon, there's your hard confirmation that it's not. And Ultimate number 5, they are confirming they are moving Ultimate back to the 0.3 schedule. This is no surprise to me because when they tried to do Ultimate on a 5.5 schedule, look what happened. We had to wait till 6.1. But that is going to be the second and final Ultimate for this expansion. They said they were likely never going to do 3. Anyone who was doing that, well, let's just say that, they had to be huffing something. Perfect. Island Sanctuary update as well for patch 6.3. And then moving on to 6.4 and 6.5, trust system for all of Stormblood, Criterion dungeons number 2 or 3, an additional area for the Island Sanctuary, as well as, of course, Pandemonium, Midst of the Realm, Fox Hollows, other trials. All the stuff you normally expect, and even in odd-numbered patches, will all be present in those patches as well. So just please look forward to it. Now, on top of that, they did have a formal announcement. Patches will have a slightly longer time between each of them. Now, pre-pandemic, it was about 17 weeks between patches. That was our going standard. They call that 3.5 months. Not really. Now that it says 4 months, it's more realistic to expect 19 weeks. Now, of course, that is still subject to change. I fully expect that it will probably be closer to 20 weeks on average, which I know you're thinking 4 weeks to a month. Hey, some months have 5 Tuesdays. It averages out, I'm sure, to be about what they're saying it is right here. But it's going to be an extra couple of weeks for each of the patches. Ivy, what are you doing? Hey, can you be normal in the middle of a recording? Okay, no, you can't. Got it. Just as long as we're on the same page there. And this is for a couple of reasons. For one, they're actually going to be giving all of their employees an additional 2 weeks vacation time throughout the year. 1 extra week will be added for the summer and for their New Year holidays. So that's part of the reason why they're doing this. But of course, that doesn't account for all of the patches. They're also just going to be taking a little bit more time with every one of the patches overall. So they're just making sure to treat the employees right because they squish a lot and they crash a lot and sometimes it's just not good for their mental health. So this is going to be for them. This is going to be for us. And hopefully everyone will get something better out of it in the end. Now, they did also make mention of some other things. Of course, throughout all of that, there's content that's not mentioned. I, of course, am reiterating to you here that that is not all of the content that will be coming in those patches. Blue Mage, for example, they said when they decide to do it, but they don't know when. And that includes other pieces of content that aren't mentioned there as well. So just keep that in mind. And to give you an idea of another reason why they need those extra 2 weeks, this is what the development team was doing in patch 3.3, and this is what the development is doing in patch 5.3. You can see the average cutscene time almost doubled. There's more quests, there's more types of content, there's more jobs to bounce, there's more bosses per patch, more words. Obviously, that means more words that need to be localized since that's the Japanese count. More UI and system word counts, tasks for the UI team, new items added to the game in an individual patch, more voiced words, almost 3 times the amount, and of course, more races to make sure the gear actually works with. So just a small list of tasks that have attributed to really why they want to take the extra couple of weeks. But they're hoping that you'll look forward to another 10 years of Final Fantasy XIV. Now, they also did confirm that data center travel is confirmed for patch 6.18. Now, I say confirmed. They don't use the word confirmed. It is scheduled, meaning it could change. And that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody because data center travel has been a fickle mistress with everything that has been going on in the past year. Now, that was it for the first half of the live letter. They then took a 20-minute intermission and came back with the second half, where they changed our translators from Aimee over to Kate, who, by the way, we did get confirmation is actually the head of localization on Final Fantasy XIV in particular now. This is because Koji was promoted to supervisor of the business division that Yoshi P is in charge of, meaning that he oversees localization for both Final Fantasy XVI, XIV, and would also be supervising for other titles that the division itself is actually in charge of. So he got a promotion. She is going to be taking his place as his exact job of what he was doing before. And she's been great up to this point. We've had her at a few events. She does a great job translating, and she seems to fit right in with the team. So good job for Koji, well deserved. And of course, Oda-san and Ishikawa are both doing their usual jobs as well. So yeah, this may not be a fully finished section, but it's a lot of scenario and lore related stuff. I guess I should probably say, listen, at this point, I haven't really done a spoiler warning, but at this point, I'm going to scroll down. The video might be over for you. I'll say this, for patch 6.1, they mentioned they are looking at feedback, Dark Knight, White Mage, Machinist, other job changes, Dragoon jumps getting shortened again. A list of a few things. More glamour plates, more spots for you to put actual items in your glamour dresser, more locations to apply the plates are also mentioned as well. So, but other than that, while they do have a few other questions and answers about stuff that are in that capacity, it's largely a spoiler from this point on. So if you haven't finished Endwalker, the video's done for you. Just turn it off at this point. Just exit out, you're gone. Don't read anything that I just scrolled down for before. Now, that being said, they asked what Azim's doing in the final days. They said it's a secret. They're not going to tell us. They don't want to give us that information. Why did Xenos dream of the final days? He was a descendant of Emmett. He had an autovism that allowed him to have visions of it. And how did Xenos become a Reaper? They're staying silent on that for now because that may be important in the future. He says, I know the answer. I just have to stay silent on it. He did tell us that the actual Reaper Void creature was important to Xenos' story. And we didn't really figure that out from Endwalker's MSQ. So there's still something to tell there. How did the 3 unsundered Asians actually survive? Venat actually left a crack for Emmett to slip through, so he would remain unsundered. When that happened, he was actually with the removed from Zodiark Elidibus as well as La Habrea, and they banded together, so all 3 of them ended up being unsundered instead. So there's that. So the rest is still being transcribed below, so I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. It may not all be there, but if it's not, whatever it is, largely just MSQ stuff, you're probably better off reading it, interpreting it on your own, because, well, you're going to be taking it not from me just speed reading through it. You can actually take in the information and come to your own conclusions about some of the more lore-related answers. This is just a reminder that in 6.1, there's going to be a housing lottery system added to the game. Plots will now have to be, you'll have to sign up, you'll have to put a deposit down on the house, and then on a certain day, it'll look at all the participants, select a winner. Everyone else will be given their money back. And if the winner takes the house, they'll pay the full price. And if they don't, then they'll get 50% of their money back. Now, the big thing is they did mention that they were going to do some first come, first serve and some lottery. But back in the previous live letter, they did say that they were actually maybe planning on doing full lottery for 6.1 and that they would need to collect feedback about whether they should do full lottery or split it between lottery and first come, first serve. As of right now, 6.1 is planned to be full lottery, and they are reading feedback on it. They did also clarify that if you are trying to get a free company house, that you can actually give permissions to your individual members to actually put deposits down either all on the same house or all on multiple houses. So you can actually have a bunch of different lotteries going for a free company, as opposed to being an individual where you will have that one chance. Now that comes with a few pros and cons. One, bigger community needs more houses. They are also adding limitations to being able to transfer power in FCs. You can't do it for, I think, 28 days as of 6.1. So if you were to quote unquote RMT or sell a house, you'd have to wait 4 weeks before you could even move on and do the next thing. So they're trying to make it more inconvenient. Of course, a lottery system also makes it more inconvenient. You either need more characters or more people who are participating, which kind of discourages the activity altogether. That being said, what could also happen is a bunch of people could spread out, try to put down deposits, down payments on a bunch of houses, and if any of them win and can't take the house because it's not the one they actually wanted, they will lose, of course, half the deposit. Probably just pennies for anyone who's actually doing this, but there is that to consider. But they're still not 100% sure that they're going to do all lottery. We may actually see first come, first serve actually opening up as well. They did also, of course, announce the free trial is going to be resuming February 22nd. There's another live letter number 69. Nice. Which is going to be going over 6.1 details. It is the first part of our 6.1 preview, and we'll probably be seeing the second part probably about early April. Reminder that the Endwalker soundtrack with the feature minion is officially going to be releasing next week, Thursday, February 23rd. Mine's already been charged. Mine's already been shipped. Looking forward to it. They're also going to be selling a print collection, which is a bunch of different artwork, some of it from different patches, some of it from work we've seen, and some from things that we've never seen, like Alphino and Alice hanging out with a Moogle. Maybe that was posted somewhere and I just don't remember. The Square Enix Cafe is going to be doing a Final Fantasy XIV collaboration. There's going to be some 14-inspired foods, including some drinks for Chocobo, a Namazu, and a Spriggan, a elaborate little cake-looking thing. Maybe it's a bun, can't really tell. And people who go can actually get a Fat Cat hoodie. I'm going to be keeping my eye out for that on iTech because I want that. They're also hiring. They said as long as you know Word and Excel, you could probably sign up to be a game designer. Yeah, and I'm not kidding. They actually said that. They said, oh, you might not have ever worked as a game designer, but if you can use Word and Excel, you should sign up for, and of course you can speak Japanese. Just try it out. That's it. That's all a game designer needs. Word and Excel, maybe even PowerPoint. Who knows? And that was the end of the live letter. However, all the transcribing will be done eventually in hours' time. So they are going to be taking their time before all the transcribes come out. There's a lot of story-related stuff. And again, I highly implore that you click on the description of this video. You go to the Final Fantasy XIV Reddit where Aluna Minori has compiled this and will be finishing compiling it as a few hours pass. And read through it all, because there was a lot of juicy stuff regarding the story and the lore. Some secrets they said they've refused to tell. For example, the moon in each shard being an actual piece of Zodiark, but after Zodiark was defeated, all of his ether would have left. But they said the moons on the other shards are actually still important to a story element. If I had to make a prediction, tinfoil hat time, the moon on the 13th is going to be very, very important. Right now, it seems to be shrouded entirely in darkness. I'd assume that all of the ether reached out and tried to absorb Zodiark's ether out of the moon, but who knows, with it not being there anymore, maybe it's not trying to spread to anything further. But that's just a guess. We'll see what actually ends up happening. If the moons are actually important on the other shards, they said they would be, but why is going to be the question, and I'm looking forward to finding out. But it's the season to be looking forward to things for Final Fantasy XIV. 2 more weeks till a live letter, another month after that will be good, plus a busy season with other games to keep us occupied on until patch 6.1 comes and the content flows. So hopefully you're all looking forward to it. I know I am. With that, that's going to be it for my recap of the live letter number 68. Let me know what you thought of it in the comment section of the video below. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And stay tuned. We'll be covering some other Final Fantasy related stuff in the coming weeks. Strangers of Paradise is going to be coming out. Triangle Strategies coming out. I know not Final Fantasy, but works well enough for me. Chocobo GP, maybe some fun stuff with that as well. Did buy a wheel for that, but keep an eye on the YouTube channel. We're going to get back to posting some content at least semi-regularly while I take care of some stuff. Anyway, I will see all of you in the YouTube video. On the next one, Twitch chat, I'll hang out for a few more minutes before I go to bed. And everyone, I'll see you later. Until then, bye-bye.